We have Attorney General Pam Bondi, who put on a nearly 5-hour meltdown marathon in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. This isn't a circus. This is a hearing. This is not a game. Secretary, I'm Attorney General. My apologies. I couldn't tell. What happens when the most powerful lawyer in America gets caught red-handed, spying on the very people she's supposed to serve, shielding a billionaire whose name appears in the Epstein files nearly 5,000 times, and then completely unravels on live television? Stay right here, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. She keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year. The majority of the American people wanted Donald Trump because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. Have you apologized to President Trump? He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. Jimmy Kimmel didn't just report on this hearing. He tore it apart piece by piece under the bright studio lights with millions watching from their living rooms. And what he uncovered about Pam Bondi and Donald Trump sent shockwaves across the entire country. It all started with one photograph, one single image snapped during that congressional hearing that revealed something the Attorney General never wanted the world to see. We have Attorney General Pam Bondi, who put on a nearly 5-hour tantrum parade in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. And for those who are wondering when the abuse of power will end, the answer is probably never. So a photographer, sitting just a few feet away, caught a shot of her open folder. The folder fell open for just a second, and right there, printed in bold letters across the top of a page, were the words, Jayapal Pramila Search History. That name belongs to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, a Democrat who had clashed with Bondi in one of the most heated exchanges of the entire 5-hour hearing. Now pause. Let that sink in for a moment. The Attorney General of the United States walked into a public hearing carrying a printed document that listed exactly what a sitting Congresswoman had privately searched for inside classified government files. Kimmel broke down exactly what that means, and the weight of it hit the room like a hammer. The photo appears to show a complete list of everything Jayapal had searched for inside the Trump-Epstein files, which, by the way, Kimmel's team has trademarked at this point. The Department of Justice had tracked her search history inside the private, secure room at the DOJ. The very room where members of Congress are legally allowed to review less redacted versions of sensitive files. They tracked those Congress members without telling them. They watched every search, every click, every query, and then they handed all of it to Bondi so she could use it as ammunition during the hearing. And then, and this is the part that makes your head spin, they were so careless, so reckless, that they printed the whole thing out, slapped a title across the top of the page that literally read, Jayapal Pramila Search History, and stuffed it into an open folder that a photographer caught on camera. Kimmel leaned into his desk, his eyebrows raised, his voice dropping low. It's such a delicate balance, he said, between stupid and evil. The audience exploded. Cheers, applause, hands clapping so hard you could feel the vibration through the screen. Because he was right. The idea that the Department of Justice, the executive branch, is spying on Congress members in the legislative branch is not just disturbing. It's a direct attack on the separation of powers that holds democracy together. Read that one more time. The Department of Justice, led by a woman who used to serve as Donald Trump's personal attorney, spied on sitting members of Congress. Then they printed the evidence. Then they brought that evidence to a public hearing. And then they got caught on camera with it spread wide open on the table. But here's the question nobody could stop asking. What exactly was Congresswoman Jayapal searching for that made the Attorney General so nervous she felt the need to spy on her? What was buried in those files that required this level of surveillance? The answer broke hearts across the room. Jayapal was searching for survivors. She was looking for the names and stories of people who had been sexually abused. Children, teenagers, young women, victims of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking ring who still, to this day, have not received justice. And then Jayapal did something that made the entire room go silent. She turned away from the microphone, looked toward the gallery behind her, and spoke directly to the survivors sitting in those seats. To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. Chairs scraped against the floor. One by one, they rose, some trembling, some with tears already sliding down their cheeks, some holding each other's hands for strength. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Every single hand went up, every single one. The camera panned across the room, capturing each raised hand, each face filled with pain, each person who had been ignored, silenced, and pushed aside by the very institution that was supposed to protect them. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Jayapal turned back to Bondi. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with something deeper than anger. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now, right now, and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through? The unacceptable, absolutely shameful release of the Epstein files that exposed their private information to the world. Bondi's jaw tightened. She shifted in her chair. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. And instead of turning around, instead of looking those survivors in the eye, she deflected. Congresswoman, you sat before. Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice. Attorney General Bondi, finish my answer. No. I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question. The gavel banged. The chair intervened. The time belongs to the gentle lady. The gentle lady has 17 seconds. Jayapal leaned forward, her voice cracking just slightly, but never breaking. I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you. And on a human level, not as a politician, not as an attorney general, just as a human being, recognize what you have done to these people. These were children. The room was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. Bondi did not turn around. And here's the part that should keep every American up at night. Every single survivor in that room raised their hand. Every one of them. Because Pam Bondi's Department of Justice refused to meet with them, refused to sit across a table and hear their stories. And while refusing those meetings, her department was simultaneously redacting the names of their abusers from the very files that were supposed to bring them justice. Kimmel didn't let that irony slip past. He caught it, held it up to the light, and made sure the whole country could see it. The Trump-Epstein files, 4,000 mentions. Pam Bondi has spent more time investigating the people who are reading the Epstein files than investigating the people who are actually in the Epstein files. Let that land. Let it sit in your chest for a second. The Attorney General of the United States devoted more energy, more resources, more attention to tracking which Congress members were reading the files than to investigating the powerful men whose names fill those files. The watchers became the watched. The investigators became the investigated. And the criminals? They stayed protected. But here's where things went completely off the rails. Just when you thought the hearing couldn't get more bizarre, Bondi grabbed the wheel and drove straight into absurdity. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P is at almost 7,000, and the Nasdaq is smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. Kimmel's face said everything his words didn't need to. His eyes went wide. His mouth dropped open. He leaned back in his chair like someone had just told him the sky was green. That's right. That's right. He's so transparent. You had to black out his name like 1,000 times. The laughter hit the studio like a wave. Because there it was, the absurdity laid bare. The president is so transparent that his name had to be redacted thousands of times from the very files his own Department of Justice was supposed to release. Transparent. With a blacked-out name. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But Bondi was so rattled by the questioning, so thrown off by the confrontation, that she seemed to forget the most basic fact of her own job. Kimmel caught it instantly. I think she forgot what branch of government she serves. And then came the moment that brought the house down. Kimmel leaned into the camera, his timing perfect, his voice steady, and delivered a line so sharp it cut through every layer of political spin in the room. You're all so caught up with pedophilia, you're not even thinking about your IRAs. The audience erupted. People were on their feet, because that single sentence captured everything Bondi had been doing for 5 straight hours, deflecting from sex trafficking, dodging questions about child abuse, and instead talking about the stock market, about retirement accounts, about the Dow Jones, as if the value of a portfolio could erase the suffering of abuse survivors standing just a few feet behind her. But Kimmel wasn't finished. Not even close. Hey Dad, you got other things to do. Do you want Bigfoot making your kid trans? No, let me do my job. One thing we know for sure is that Donald Trump doesn't want us to see these files. And to me, that's all you need to know. He paused. The studio went quiet. Then he leaned forward and with a slight grin dropped an analogy that made the whole audience nod. I mean, you walk in on your teenager and he suddenly pulls up the covers and slams his laptop shut. I think you have a pretty good idea why. You don't even need to look at his browser history. The applause was thunderous because the analogy was perfect, simple, clear, devastating. If you have nothing to hide, you don't slam the laptop shut. If you have nothing to hide, you don't redact 5,000 mentions of your name. If you have nothing to hide, you don't spy on the people trying to read the files. But for whatever reason, the country is still waiting for those files. And then Pam Bondi did something that stunned even her own supporters. She turned on a member of her own party, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, the very man who co-sponsored the bill to release the Epstein files in the first place, started questioning her about the redactions. And instead of answering him, Bondi attacked. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back. Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. Red-handed. The word hung in the air. The audience laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes with disbelief. There was one redaction where he's listed as a co-conspirator, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. Kimmel froze. His eyebrows shot up. He pointed at the screen. Yes. The ultra-conservative congressman from Kentucky, a man who endorsed Donald Trump 3 times, has Trump derangement syndrome. Meanwhile, Trump himself, the man who shared an image depicting the Obamas as monkeys just the other day. He's the stable one. He's solid as a rock. Everyone else is deranged. Kimmel shook his head slowly, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Seriously, there's nothing to defend here. This Department of Justice is hiding the names of people who are not victims. Why are they doing that? If they have nothing to hide, why are they hiding names? That's it. That's the only question anybody needs to ask. Let that last line echo in your mind. Hiding the names of people who are not victims. That's the whole game, laid out in plain sight. Protect the powerful. Ignore the survivors. Shield the billionaires. Silence the children. 5 hours of deflection. 5 hours of screaming. 5 hours of dragging the conversation from sexual abuse to stock prices, from trafficking victims to tax returns, from the cries of survivors to the climb of the Dow Jones. Pam Bondi spied on Congress. She defended a man whose name appears in the Epstein files 5,000 times. She redacted names not to protect victims, but to protect the powerful. And when she was finally confronted, when the survivors stood up, when the evidence was laid bare, she talked about the stock market. Jimmy Kimmel didn't just call it out. He ripped the curtain down. He exposed the entire corrupt machinery on live television, under the bright studio lights, with millions of people watching. This is what real accountability looks like, because when the news anchors won't ask the hard questions, when the networks look the other way, when the powerful think they're untouchable, sometimes it takes a comedian to tell the truth. If you believe the truth matters more than the stock market, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, drop a comment below telling us what shocked you the most, because this story isn't over, not by a long shot, and the next chapter might be even more explosive than this one.